Thank you for sitting down with us today, Gretchen. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you're doing this. It's important voters know who's running for office and a little bit about them, so I'm glad we're doing this.
I appreciate it very much. Deadline Detroit appreciates it. I would like to conduct this in a little different fashion. I think we're all very tired of debates and the format they usually take, and the questions you have to answer over and over again. So I'd like to do a few different ones. I think everybody would find it very informative and maybe even entertaining.
All right.
All right.
Let's give it a whirl.
First question I'd like to ask, and I would ask anybody running for public office anywhere in the country these days, is why in the world do you want to do this?
Yeah, in this environment, I think that's a really good question. I love this state. I've lived here my whole life. I was raised here. I always knew that I wanted to stay here and raise a family here, and that's what I'm doing. I've got 2 daughters and 3 stepsons. We're kind of a Brady Bunch family, a man with 3 boys and one with 2 girls, combined our households. And I look around at the Michigan in which my kids are growing up, and it doesn't live up to the one that I think of when I talk about my pride. This was the place where innovators and problem solvers, this is a place people came to from around the world for opportunity, a good job, great schools, roads that were safe and easy to travel, and water that was clean to drink. And I think on all 4 of these fronts, we've got a lot of work to do. And as I look around and I think about what I want and hope for my kids, I want them to stay here in Michigan. I want that for all of our families. And I think, my background in the legislature, crossing the aisle to get things done is something that we need right now more than ever, because this is a great state. We've got a lot of great things going for us, but we've got to get these problems fixed.
I was born and raised here in Detroit, and when I went to school in Detroit, the Detroit public school system was maybe either number 1 or number 2 in the country.
Right.
All right. And it's the reason I moved my family out of Detroit was because of schools. All right. So I guess I would ask, what can you do about schools?
Yeah.
Right? How do we fix them?
Well, we didn't get
obviously it's not money.
Right. Well, we didn't get here overnight. And it's not going to be as simple as making one different decision. I mean, you say obviously it's not money. However, there is an adequacy study that says we're not anywhere near investing in our kids' education the way that we should be. And that wasn't a partisan group. That was business and teaching groups, that came together and really did the study of what should we be investing in our kids' education. We're in the bottom 10 in this country, where we used to lead the world. And DPS was one of the best districts around. Not many people even remember that, right? But that's our great legacy. And we need to get back to a place where education's not a partisan issue like it has been in this state. In a lot of other states, the education budget is the place where Democrats and Republicans find their common ground, because it's the education of kids. Kids aren't Republican or Democratic, they're just kids. And every child needs a great public school education to start off with. So I really think by making universal early childhood education available for every child, ensuring that we're meeting literacy expectations by the end of 3rd grade. Right now, the predominant philosophy in our state government is that, the state went to court and said kids don't have a constitutional right to read. There are attacks in terms of, on teachers and people that go into education, and these are things we got to reverse.
We've all been looking at that for the last 10 years, right? And I don't believe it's a Republican or Democrat problem. I think we still teach school like it's 1955. And families have, there's families that are sending their kids to school, and there's 2 parents in every house, and it's happy days, all right? And it's not. All right, so innovation needs to get into schools. And I don't think we talk about what the real problems are, all right, and attack the real problems. Unfortunately, and it puts every politician in a bad spot, but the MEA has a very strong, powerful bloc generally is Democratic. But they have, it appears to me, and this is just my opinion, all right, they block anything that really needs to be done to change the way these kids are taught. And you know, you are, and your opponent and your party's representative the last time around, and it goes back, and I've listened to it. All right, I was a product of the system here. By the way, innovation-wise, this is still a great area for that. I was able to build one of the largest high-tech companies in the world right here in Detroit, using people exclusively from Southeast Michigan. We had a few Western Michigan people in once in a while, but we tried to, limit that. But I would like to really understand if there's anything you're looking at that will change the status quo. All right, I've watched them put my pay, my taxes, the bulk of them are going toward education. $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year. Nothing changes. All right, so now I'm paying, because I'm a privileged old white guy, I'm paying $120,000 a year in tuition for my 4 youngest kids. I got 9-year-old twins, a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're all going to private school. All right, because I have no faith in even the school districts in Bloomfield Hills and West Bloomfield. All right, so I'm just talking from a grassroots level. Almost every parent understands that now in Michigan. So what are we going to do to make sure that the kids, parents can't afford to send them to these schools, can rest assured their kid will learn to read?
Yeah, so, the education system was the thing that leveled the playing field for kids. When kids went to school, they had the wraparound services. Yes, I do think you're right. We have a very different society now. We have different issues that kids are coming to school, confronting at home, that carry into the schools, and they don't get the wraparound supports they need to manage it, whether it is social workers or psychiatrists, psychologists, nutrition. It's a problem, just the basics for a lot of kids. And so the school, which was the place that used to be able to level the playing field, we've gotten rid of all of those people that played that role, that made those wraparound supports for kids that didn't have it coming from the house. But now the kids are coming in with greater stressors, and we're not making the investment in that. And that's one of the things that we need to do very different. I understand, your assumptions about our educators, and some of the traditional partisan lines that have been drawn over the years. But I'll tell you this, I have met teachers in our state that are on the bridge card who make so little, they're actually on food stamps in this state. Education used to be treated like a profession. My grandma taught in Waterford. My grandfather was a superintendent of Pontiac Public Schools during court-ordered busing. No one goes into education because they think they're gonna make a lot of money. It's a calling, and you should be able to make a good living as an educator. But for the last 20 out of the last 28 years, they've not had allies in state government. And you say they stop legislation, but we've been unable to set the agenda because we've not been in the majority. And I think that's part of why we're in the bottom 10, because teachers' voices aren't listened to. They're the experts, and yet we have a legislature who thinks just because they all went to school that they're all experts in schools. And I think that's a part of the problem.
Well, someone asked me a question the other day, because I've been railing about education for 20 years, 25 years. Longer than that. I won't go on how long. But someone asked me the other day, were the majority of your teachers women? I went, yeah, they were all women. And he said, how many of those women you think would be teaching today? And I think this goes to what you just said. You thought about it, and I thought, not many. And he said, why? And I said, well, because I think they have more choice today. So you're really, unless you're one of those special people that has a real calling, if you've got all this talent, you're going to do several other jobs that weren't available to women in the 50s, all right? So I agree with what you're saying, but I think it's even far more than what you're talking about. Believe it's Finland has the top-rated public education system in the country, in the world, and it took them 25 years to get there. But teachers make an enormous amount of money. I'm not talking about making 60,000 versus 45.
Right.
They make the equivalent of 150,000 a year U.S. Very, very respected in the community. All right, and all the other things that go with it. And I think that's one of the keys to really getting very talented people to come and teach.
Right.
What happened, it seems inadvertently, to education was that when a Republican governor finally signed, based on the Constitutional Convention back in the 50s, signed a bill that allowed public service employees and school teachers to be members of a union. It was a good thing. It allowed the union to start to increase and set the salaries. But inadvertently, it eliminated the top performers from exceeding what the average was. And we lost a lot of good people, or had a lot of people just say, well, I'm going to go teach in private business, all right? And there's a real need for that as well. So when we talk about changing the playing field, all right, I think we're going to have to go and take a look and say, this is really much more of an effort than just getting them a few more bucks.
Right. And I'm glad you made that point, because I don't think anyone thinks just making a greater investment fixes the problems. There are some deeper, more fundamental issues that we've got to address as a society.
Okay,
There's no
good.
question.
All right, well, enough about that.
You got 4 kids?
I got 7 boys.
Okay. Oh, wait, you have 7 boys?
7 boys.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the last 4 are all in elementary school? Is that what you're
Yeah, I
saying?
have 9-year-old twins, a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old.
And
I
the
also have a 52-year-old, a 50-year-old, and a 46-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Prolific.
Yeah.
Are the
Yeah.
twins identical?
No.
Okay.
No.
My husband has twins, and they are identical.
Yeah, well, that's special, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're sitting here in Birmingham, and my concern is with Detroit. There's 100 square miles of total devastation that remain in Detroit. There's 700,000 people living where 2 million people live. So how do we ever fix that? How do we get 1 million and some odd people back into living in the city?
Right. I'm glad you raised that, because I think a lot of people don't know how enormous the footprint of the city of Detroit is, right?
Right.
143 square miles, bigger than, I think it's Atlanta and San Francisco and Manhattan combined.
Right, you could drop those 3 cities into Detroit and
Into the
still have
footprint.
100 square miles left.
And so with that comes enormous challenges. Now, one of the things I'm really grateful for is the support of Mayor Duggan. I'm going to be a great partner to him, and I had worked with Governor Snyder on some important things that benefited the city of Detroit, shepherding through the grand bargain, as the Democratic leader, and I stepped up and helped play a role there, getting the lights turned on. But there are fundamentals that need to be addressed in those neighborhoods where the cranes are not yet. There are families who need good schools for their kids. They need the ability to get to a good job, and we got to connect them to skills and make sure they've got grocery stores. I mean, the fundamentals are so important. I know Mayor Duggan's got some great attraction going on in Midtown and downtown and bringing young people into work. We want them to stay and build lives within the city of Detroit and raise kids in the city of Detroit. And that's where I think that the next governor is going to be really important, to be a partner to the work that the mayor's done, but also to the work that needs to be done in the schools. Dr. Beatty is a great leader, and I think he's got, brings a lot of great things to the table, but he's going to need sustained support, and he's going to need us to be to acknowledge that it won't happen overnight, and that's, I think, why the education piece is so important. Across the state, we rank 10th, in the bottom 10 in our country. And I've got kids in the public schools. My kids go to East Lansing. It's a relatively good school, but relative to a state that is in the bottom 10, that doesn't give me a whole lot of comfort. And we should all, everyone should be uncomfortable by that statistic. And that's why I think the education piece is so important for us as a state, but to the city of Detroit too.
Hey, look, road, it's a simple answer on roads. We take low bid. All right, somebody thought that was a great idea, low bids. All right, you get low bid roads. All right, if they don't work,
right,
then they have to fix them again. So good luck with that. All right.
What else? You said you wanted to talk about something else.
Immigration.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about immigration.
Sure.
How many illegals do you think are living in Michigan? Do you have any idea?
I don't have a number to put on that, no.
All right, so we have 700,000 people that remain in the city of Detroit, most of which are still there because they couldn't afford to move out. All right, I think that's a fair statement. It's not a slur or a slap it. It's just a fact. All right. What if there were, let's say, 500,000 illegals living in the Detroit area or in the Michigan in general? Does the governor have the ability to put a plan in to try to get those people a path to citizenship, at least be citizens of Michigan?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because if we could get a program going in Detroit that allowed people to effectively homestead, move their family in, have a mandatory training program in skills so they can get a job, because we have about 1 million job openings for people with certain skills.
Right.
And you were to then actually have them have jobs and paying taxes, that would make the city very vibrant. It would help these people get a path to citizenship. Do you have any ideas on programs similar to that you could repopulate the city and repopulate the state?
Yeah, I think, one of the great stories of Michigan is that this was the place people moved to from around the world,
Right.
The Finns who went to the Upper Peninsula looking for mining jobs. And
Pasties.
And brought us pasties. The, Dutch who came to Western Michigan, right? The Middle Easterners who came to Dearborn, or Polish, people of Polish descent who came to Hamtramck and brought us punchkis, right? So it's a great part of who we are and the rich diversity of this state. I think that right now what is happening in our country with regard to the conversation around immigration is, it makes it harder to welcome and be a destination for people from around the world. And I think that's something that I'm really concerned about. The deciding whether it's trade policy or immigration policy via Twitter is just plain dumb. We need to have a comprehensive plan, and it needs to have Democrats and Republicans working together on it. Right. There are a lot of people in this country who are fearful right now because of what's happening. Last night I had my debate with my opponent, and yesterday all over the news it was about threats that were being made to former presidents and public servants. And I just think that we've got to have level-headed people who can talk to one another. You don't have to agree on everything, but I think that if you can agree on what the goal is, we can accomplish a lot. I want to make Michigan a place that people come to from around the world for opportunity again. We do have 1 million jobs that are unfilled. We do have needs. We do want to grow our population. We go into this next census and then redistricting and reapportionment, we may lose another voice in Washington, D.C. So these are some of the things that I'm very mindful of and eager to get to work on. But a governor can't impact immigration policy unilaterally. It's a frustration.
I would ask, why not? All right, why nobody else is doing it?
Right. Well, I know. I'm running for a state office, not a federal office, but I share your frustration on it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep. I appreciate your time. I'm glad we had an opportunity to sit down. It was nice to meet you.
It was my pleasure.